In May of 2014, Texan indie developer Scott Cawthon, known online as Anim Dude, would start development on his planned-to-be final game, Five Nights at Freddy's. Scott Cawthon would be inspired by criticism of one of his previous games, Chipper & Son's Lumber Co., where people criticized the game for being unappealing and looking like animatronics from Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz Pizza Place. Scott Cawthon would start laying groundworks for what would become Five Nights at Freddy's, including creating the three main characters, Freddy Bear, Bonnie the Bunny, and Chica the Chicken. All characters would have an internal model to be used for all three. This would be called an endoskeleton, based off real-life animatronic mechs. A lot of features would be added on pretty early, including a lives counter, cameras, the doors, and the AI for Bonnie, the first character programmed for the game. His jump scare would be a still image, instead of the moving images that would be seen in the final game. Scott would eventually decide to add a fourth character that would be in a special area known as Pirate's Cove. The three animal options for this new character were a beaver, a wolf, and a fox. Originally, Scott was going to do a beaver character, but due to possible comparisons with Chipper, he would instead decide to go with a fox, naming the character Foxy. Scott would also decide to change the model of the endoskeleton to a one with red eyes and sharp teeth, seen in this image. He would cite it as possibly being more scary to a general audience than the original one, saying that most people probably wouldn't find the, quote, goofy eyes scary. With all this slated for the game's development to begin, June would bring a lot of things to FNaF's development. On June 13th, 2014, Scott Cawthon put Five Nights at Freddy's on Steam Greenlight in an attempt to get the game on Steam. On the next day, June 14th, 2014, he would start a Kickstarter, which would fail and be cancelled on June 17th, the same year. Somewhere around the same time, Scott Cawthon created a trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's using some of the earlier models. He would also change the endoskeleton, removing the teeth and replacing it with the original teeth from the earlier model. The trailer was used on Kickstarter, Steam Greenlight, and YouTube on the same day, June 14th, 2014. Scott would also record footage of a really early version of Five Nights at Freddy's known as Five Nights at Freddy's Gameplay. This gameplay contains many differences to the final game, like still having the lives counter and having a lot of errors in the cameras, specifically their names. For unknown reasons, both the gameplay trailer and, weirdly enough, the trailer itself, which was called Five Nights on YouTube, were both deleted and removed, with a re-uploaded version of both being put in place. It is currently not known the exact reason as to why Scott removed both the gameplay trailer and the original trailer, but it's possible that he had to change things or change how it looked or something. We really don't know exactly what was changed, or if anything was changed, or the exact reason why they were deleted. It was also possibly because the name of the original trailer was only Five Nights instead of Five Nights at Freddy's. Scott also decided that he would instead use the original Endo 01 model instead of the other two models he used in the trailer and Steam Greenlight images. Scott would also create this iconic promotional piece for the game. Scott would continue the next 2 months, continuing working on new features like Phone Guy and the AI for Freddy, along with a very important thing, Easter eggs. FNaF was probably never meant to have a story, at least in its early development, but eventually a story would slowly be created that would give the game sort of an interesting difference to other horror games at the time. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's centers around the events of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, having each animatronic being possessed by dead children, including a fifth child who possesses an Easter egg character known as Golden Freddy, or at least Yellow Bear, as he isn't actually called Golden Freddy anywhere in the original game, either spoken or in the code. Other details that are mentioned is that the serial killer wore a Fazbear costume. There was an event known as the Bite of 87 that we have no other clue about, at least in the first game, and that Phone Guy dies at the end of Night 4, him being replaced by possibly Golden Freddy in Night 5's phone call. Most of that is the general story of Five Nights at Freddy's. Most of the other things that we've come to know and love with the series, at least in its lore, probably more hate actually, is stuff that is in other games after the original. So, yeah. The original story is very uncomplicated and very, very small, with only a few things actually mentioned, and a lot of things contradicted by following games. On July 24th, 2014, Scott would release an IndieDB page for Five Nights at Freddy's along with a demo for the game. This demo contained the first 2 nights, along with the majority of the game mechanics. It also fixed up a lot of the features that were broken in earlier things like screenshots or trailers. The demo also removed several features that were obsolete and no longer going to be featured in the game, like the lives counter, only remaining in the game's files. It also never used the weird characters looking at you screenshot that was in the trailer, even though it's in the game's code. It's unknown if it was ever going to be used, though it doesn't appear to have been. Though Freddy does look at you if all other characters are gone from the stage, so it's possible that it was scrapped for favor of this. A few people would test out the game, or at least play the game on IndieDB, though it wouldn't get as much success as it would later. Scott would continue to develop the game up to release, including adding a 6th night, a custom night, and several other small features. On the Sura, the gaming platform, on August 8th, 2014, Scott would release version 1.0 of the final release build of Five Nights at Freddy's. Several people would play FNaF during the early days of release, including, of course, Markiplier, who would record his playthrough and release it on August 12th, 2014. Scott would later release FNaF on Steam on August 18th, 2014, which would bring even more popularity to the game. The channel Game Theorist, at the time ran by MattPat, or Matthew Patrick, created a Five Nights at Freddy's game theory on October 23rd, 2014. Several people would create fan creations, and especially fan games for FNaF. Several people would create art pieces, and this would inspire Scott Cawthon to continue development on games, starting with the first teaser for Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And the rest is history.